So this is like a little advertisement for the video. Fanatical, which is like a site that sells bundles and other games for Steam and crap like that. They have this bundle that has Symphonic Rain in it, and you can get, I think, 3 VNs for like $6 or 5 VNs for, I think, 9. A lot of these are kind of pricey, so you can actually get them for a great deal. I didn't read a lot of them. I know one guy that likes the nurse ones, but for me, it's like I'm just trying to get more people to buy Symphonic Rain more than anything else. So I'll be talking about Symphonic Rain. I'm not going to skirt around the spoilers all that much. It's a great VN, and honestly just go buy it and play it blind if you didn't. These aren't reviews for a couple of reasons. It's more like an overview on why I like them so much, though it's more based on feelings than being analytical or anal about random crap. Though a huge chunk of it is mainly because some of these are going to be like VNs I've read maybe a decade or two ago. At first I was going to call this series something like Recollections, but I feel like Down Memory Lane is just a better title. Symphonic Rain was one of those titles I was actually kind of worried about. It's one of my favorite VNs, and more often than not, I'd say it's my top pick. I still remember a good chunk of it, but I've had doubts that maybe my score is heavily based on nostalgia, but I got the Steam version and it's still as charming as I remembered it being. So hey, good for me. Sure, I'm not a huge fan of the new character art, but that's based more on that I felt that the original felt perfect for what it was going for. It had this melancholic feeling to it. It had been a different case if it changed the backdrops alongside with it, but now it's just two styles clashing with each other. In a technical sense, you can consider like a valid stylistic choice if you consider the character brightening up the protag's overall melancholic like worldview, but I don't think that was the case. If I had my preferred choice, then I would have loved to have it all be redone by the guy who handled the Katahane, or I think it's the same person that made Hinata Boko. Both are great. Anyways, it's kind of hard to explain what I really liked about Symphonic Rain because most of it is just melded well with each other. Pacing of the plot alongside the relaxed ambience of the town, how the OST couples with it seamlessly, having both some story points that are obvious whilst having some subtlety for others, and how some can see where the plot is going, but others can enjoy how everything makes sense when everything gets revealed. How the insert songs just bash you in the head with what each character is going through, how the town itself can be considered its own character. The plot centers around two things: a town that never misses a day of rain, and a kid named Chris that plays this magical instrument called the Foretell. It's finicky and sounds better the more emotion you can dump into it. Chris is in his last year and has to find someone to perform with him for the final exam. If he does well, he's going to get all these offers for work. On the other hand, the kid isn't all that up for it and drags his feet to get even a partner. You get 3 options to start with: Torta, who's the childhood friend, and then Val and Lise. Lise is the most blunt one plot-wise, and it's there more to just tell the reader that some real shit is happening. Torta should be left for the end, and Val is actually a pretty interesting character overall. The 3 of them are foils for Chris to varying degrees, and this is basically where the spoilers are going to show up. I'll go through the 4 main characters and then I'll go over Chris. A few things about the other characters will be saved for Chris section as well, but it'll take a while. I think the girls have 2 insert songs each, one that make you play, and it's basically their performance piece for the plot, and the other one after you finish the route. There's also the opening that represents them all, and then there's the ending which centers around Chris, from what I remember. I think all the songs kind of spoil what the characters are about, but honestly you're concentrating so hard on the minigame that I don't think a lot of people even noticed, especially one like for Foul. So for Foul you have Music of Rain and Melody. Music of Rain is infamous for how stupidly hard it is compared to the rest of the songs that you have to play. It's honestly just stupidly obnoxious. The BPM is somewhat high and 3/4 of it consists of like the double input presses. On the other hand, the obnoxiousness of this track is a perfect representation of her character and what they're going for. And what's funny enough that she's the best route to start the VN with, so you're just kind of fucked. I recommend just putting the song on easy mode. I still play a decent amount of Muse Dash, which is a pretty easy rhythm game, right? It's only like 2 buttons and there's, depending on how you do, but whatever. There's all these stages and you can get to like 11 or 12. I can do 10 and 11 kind of reliably, and that's still a lot easier than the stupid song because everything is based on like 8 keys, but all of them are not like initial. It's awful. Actually, I'll probably put on the screen just playing, it'll be fine. Anyways, back to Music of Rain. This is mainly with my memory of like the fan translation. The main sections are kind of like look at me and listen to me and then love me, the real me's right here. And that's what made her overall interesting. She's the one that most would have differing opinions by the end because she turns out to be kind of a shitlord. But that's what made the route fun to go through because you can either go either way with how she feels. So let's say like 80% of the way through, Val tells him that, oh yeah, she's just using him to get these high-end offers. And that's mainly because Chris is maximum depresso espresso and those emotions amp up his plan. And the reason behind it is because she's always been used herself. Because she was an orphan and she's just getting funded and raised because they believe she had talent so they can profit from it. And it's been well, but I think it was more towards like the guy wanted fame of like, oh, I raised this kid instead of just money. Basically, she's just a stupidly damaged human being. The thing is, there's a split between the readers on what she feels. Some believe that she actually does love the guy, just in a warped mindset, and I'm in that group. I've seen people on the other side, but I forgot their argument, but I think it was based on the section in her second song, which was Melody. Melody goes about her hesitating between her dream and her newfound love, and I think by the end of it, it was more like akin to her dream being kind of vague on what it actually is. So it goes back to either just using him or dumping the initial dream and having the relationship as her new dream, or the one that makes most sense to me where she's just combining the two and making a whole new dream of having them both. But that's what makes her interesting. It's not totally clear since she's kind of fucked up. But Chris understands that and they have their own way of handling their lives, and it just makes it ungeneric. So the concept is mainly like, hey, I'm going to keep you around until you stop being useful. Now keep getting better so you always have a reason to stay with me as well. So it's some kind of like comical version of a marriage vow. She was just raised poorly and has massive trust issues. So she goes with a roundabout way to start this relationship. She's more centered around like having and being weighed down by her baggage, but using what she knows to trudge along in comparison to Chris, who's basically just stagnant. Lise's songs are kind of boring, but that's only because they're kind of semi-happy, where Leshian is like, yeah, today's kind of shitty, but there'll always be hope tomorrow. And I think the second one was called Hello, with like a bird I'll always fly to you being the final verse. And it's mainly something around like, oh, I'm happy I found someone that can understand me and I can experience all these new things that all I want with him, right? On the other hand, Hello is really catchy and it sounds similar to some radio jingle when I was a kid. Her foil towards Chris is more in that she's eventually hopeful for tomorrow and facing what comes next after spending time with them. So she found a safe space in him and he found someone to distract him from his own problems. She's kind of the weakest of the batch, but her route is pretty decent if placed in a different VN. And I've seen the setting here and there. She's mainly here to show comparisons towards Arietta and how shit is happening in the background, and they already hinted at here and there, and this was like the last stop before they shoved it into your face. This kind of happened in Umineko as well, where it's like you kind of know who it is in the first chapter or even the second chapter, but by the end of I think it was like the 6th or maybe the 7th, they just tell you, it's like, fuck it, you're just retarded, here it is. And then there's Torta. I kind of go back and forth if she's my favorite character or not. Usually I'd say it's Phorni, but I got a soft spot for this one. Her 2 tracks is Secret and Always Smiling. They're contradictory to each other, and I feel like it works better because of it. Secret is just her holding her feelings back and yet hoping that Chris will eventually look at her instead of her sister. I think there's also a bit where she's teetering between showing and telling him everything, but she's kind of a coward. Always Smiling is more of an acceptance that it's not going to work out, that she went far enough and sometimes people don't need to know everything. How she'll hope to recall all these happy memories but then close them back before she starts crying, just so she can always be smiling in front of everybody, especially for Chris. She can technically be placed anywhere in the route order, but she works best as a third just because it flows well to the first ending. How her route end is kind of weird, and it would have been better just to integrate the Alfine and this one together, but then you'd be missing out on the second song, so it's like, there's nothing you can really do. She's kind of like Val, but the meters are reversed. She's weighed down by her baggage, but still goes on supporting Chris and hoping he'll get through it all instead. She has a lot of self-doubt and wonders if this or that is the right way to do things, and that's what her songs are about. She has contradictory thoughts and keeps looping, but overall still keeps Chris's well-being at the forefront. Like, the difference between her and Fine is just that she stops looping and just tells him everything. Finally, there's Phorni with, I think it's I'm Always Close to You and Faye, and they're just as contradictory as Tortoise, but in a little different way. Or rather, they want something, but they end in acceptance, just like how Torta is, right? I forgot which one is the first one. I thought it was Faye, but the game has the other one locked first, so I guess it's that one. I'm Always Close to You is obviously about wanting to do something and being close to Chris, and she keeps going at it. She knows her time's limited, but wants to be here with him and last as long as she can. Chris is oblivious to all of this, and it makes the English verse kind of heart-wrenching, where she tells him she's alright and she loves him and what she's doing. And the second half is like her apologizing that she had to go and asked him to live on. It's like, oh, holy shit. And then there's Faye, where it centralizes like on the I don't ask for any rewards, only love. And it's generally about how she'll support Chris on whatever life decisions he makes, even if it breaks them apart. It could be construed that the requirement is that like he has to love her, but I think it's more on something around like I love you so I don't need anything as long as you're doing well. I don't have much to say about Phorni. She's usually my favorite character, but I can't really explain it. A good portion of it is I think she's charming, and the whole route's charming. It's like it's fine. It's more something you have to experience for yourself. So now that I got the songs and the girls out of the way, I can talk about Chris. To be even anywhere close to 09 in my books, the protag has to be their own character. They're not your avatar for you. They're not some rando just happens to know how to fix everybody's problems or randomly just attract everybody in their vicinity. There's a place and time for that, and I can enjoy it. It just won't be in the higher parts of my list. Basically, they need their own issues and have them develop in their own way by either self-reflection or by figuring out and getting help whilst helping the rest of the cast. And holy shit, Chris is a mess. That's kind of to be expected once everything gets revealed. From what I remember, his girlfriend got hit by a car and she's in a coma. The dude is on full denial and espresso depresso to the max. Do people even say that anymore? Fuck it, right? He gets gaslit that she's actually fine and just learning how to make bread via these letters that are actually being written by his girlfriend's sister, Torta, and that they're just in a long-ass distance relationship, which would technically be true considering she had no, like, either low or no musical talent. So even if she didn't get hit by the car and no coma, it'd still be that anyway, or the long-distance relationship, I mean, right? This town is constantly raining, but it's actually just his psyche. Generally, the town is fine, so he just assumes everybody's used to the rain and only the tourists care about it and carries these umbrellas. That's actually just the only times it's actually raining in the town. There's times where the rain actually lets up for him, but that's generally when he's in a good mood or something nice happened to him. It's one of the more subtle signs of what's actually going on, but the signs just keep getting more blunt the more time passes. Eventually, Torta asks the girl on whatever route you're on for a talk. Chris assumes it's like, oh, some girl talk, but about his condition. After that, the girls stop wondering what he means about the rain, and they're just seeing with umbrellas. Mind you, none of this is actually told to you. It's like, oh yeah, she has an umbrella. Oh, Tor just comes in like, hey, can I talk to you? But there's no like segue to like, okay, now it's the girls talk. It's like, no, it's like, fine, you just have to know what's going on. Basically, it's implied, right? And I'm one of those things where it's like, it's amazing when things are just implied. You don't need to spend like another 3 hours explaining shit that, yeah, it's easy to understand what's going on. In some cases, I can see Chris, and I think his name was James from Silent Hill 2, to be kind of similar in some senses. Even the whole world building is kind of the same thing, where the main characters are kind of losers that are in some form of denial here and there. They're in places that are unnatural, but are really formatted slightly based on their own psyches. And it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And the only difference is no pyramid head trying to kill you. And anyways, Lise becomes a substitute for Arietta in her route, except Chris never came to acknowledge that Arietta was in a coma. He subconsciously knows he failed and is trying to get it right this time around, so you can say like, oh, it's like a Maria thing, but not really. Torta's ending, or rather her second ending, is about Chris figuring out what happened, to accepting everything, and continues moving on with his life with Torta. And then there's Val's ending, which I'd say is one of the more interesting ones of the initial three. Sure, Torta can build up some intrigue to see what exactly she wants to talk to Chris about. Sure, Lise's route is super blunt and it makes you wonder when Chris is going to realize what he lost. But Val's ending is when it doesn't really tell you outright unless you have an inkling of what's going on. So it's super possible even if you do her route first, but you're most likely not unless you're taking every new subject matter into consideration, which that in itself becomes a problem the more you read, since almost nothing gets to surprise you anymore afterwards. And that's kind of what I'm in now. It's kind of sucking. Anyways, the whole thing is like, yeah, they succeeded. Yeah, they're getting offers that Val wanted, and they're taking this train to get out of town. From what I remember, this goes through this tunnel. So the town is raining, they get on the train, and they have their talk. I don't remember a lot of what they're talking about, but I believe she gives like a second half for her necklace and what they're going to do or what they're going to be doing. The necklace was like a pair of wings, and she needs them to keep on flying now. So it's one of those things like, we're an item, we have to keep being together to succeed, otherwise we both just fail. The train finally goes through the tunnel, and Chris notes that it stopped raining. And if it's in the initial route, you can assume like, well, yeah, because you left town. But it's actually that like he finally started healing and moving on. It's not as great as the Torta / Phina ending, since he doesn't confront his past issues on screen. But if you had all the right circumstances of having it be your first route, and either knowing what's going on or reflecting back after everything's revealed, it's just a really fun time. I also don't remember what character the game forces you on if you just meander around and actively try to be a loner. So I was trying it out, and it does seem like Val is the answer for that. So overall, it's my favorite VN more often than not. Part of it is how I felt during those times. And I could say that there's other VNs that are on like higher on a technical level, but those rarely come back to my mind like this one does. Really, it's like a combination of like a charming background setting, the musical score that supports the feeling of what's going on or what it's going for, and the main character that's heavily flawed but it's enjoyable enough to see them go through it. But seriously, I still remember the majority of the soundtrack, and it was over like a decade ago. There's a lot of VNs that I've read this year or even last year where it's like, I don't remember shit from it. Or at most, it's like, there was like these 3 songs that are really funky and I like them a lot, but I don't remember what the fuck they were. So this one's done. It's a lot longer than I was hoping for. I thought it'd be like a 5-minute thing. My timer says 30 minutes. Through editing, it's probably like 15, I think. I think the next one will be Kira Kira. Technically, that one's already done, but I felt this one should be done first. And I have an idea of like the next 3 afterwards, but I don't know the order, and maybe I'll just not do them because I have like other things in drafts already. But, you know, who knows?